So I was born actually in Oakland, California. You know, my dad, Benny Crawford, he was a bodybuilder my whole life. And so he was in bodybuilding when I was born. And then at 7, he shut his California gym down and we moved out here. And so all my formative years from 7 to 18 were here on island.
And I guess at what point did you leave off island to, after you graduated? How quick after?
Yeah, so we graduated from ND in like June, and then in July I was on an airplane. I turned 18 July 29th, and just short, like within the week after that, I was on a plane and I went to Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington, and that's where I spent the next 5 years, with one of those years being abroad, because I did a study abroad in Italy, in Florence, my junior year of college.
Oh, what was your major in?
I double majored. I started out with just sociology. I actually went to college to be a biology major. I wanted to be a dentist. And I took my first class in biology, and I thought, I don't think this is my calling after all. And I ended up switching. So I majored in sociology. And then when I came back from Italy, at that time I was dating Ed, who's now my husband, and he was going to have to stay around an extra year, so I double majored and ended up with a degree in sociology and a degree in political science.
I guess was cooking something that you always were into?
No, that's the crazy thing. I mean, I look at this life, how I'm sitting here and people are talking to me about cooking or asking me about recipes, and I wasn't raised to cook. You know, here in the islands we have our nanas and they cook for us, or we go to parties and the food is just there, or maybe we prepare things alongside, which is kind of how I did grow up, is I might be in her kitchen and she might have me grab ingredients, but it wasn't something that I learned to do as a child. And then I left and went to college and ate a lot of fast food and just kind of did the college thing, but then I met my husband and I remember thinking, okay, I'm gonna woo this guy with something, and I just thought I have to learn to cook, because I knew culturally it was in me and I had a pretty good palate from how I grew up. So I picked one thing and I just started cooking, and I made a really good baked chicken. That was one of the first things I learned to make. And I remember he lived with a house full of guys, and I would bake this chicken and make rice and bring soy sauce over. And they would think I was the most amazing thing in the world. So it was then I learned food is the great connector. If you make a really good dish, it makes people so happy. And that's the culture that I grew up with too. So I just started slowly teaching myself how to cook. I learned how to make fish tacos, which we talked about in Food Fighters. It was one of those first things. We had a great fish taco at a restaurant, and I thought, I'm going to figure out how to make this at home. So I learned how to do that at home and made great fish tacos, and then from there it just grew. So I really taught myself to cook, picking one thing, wanting to do it really well, and then once I could specialize in that and I knew I had knocked it out of the park, I'd move on to something else. And so over the years, it's just kind of, it's made me, I guess, a good cook. I don't look at myself and think, wow, I'm just so great in the kitchen. It's just something I love to do, because again, food is such a happy thing for people. And I can, host my children's friends over and feed them well, and I can host our friends over and feed them well, and it lightens the mood and it lightens the spirit. And so totally self-taught, and all for the goal of just, bringing people together.
So at what point was Rebel Grain formed?
Rebel Grain, so in 2009, Sebastian, my little guy, was probably about 3.5, and in that we were constantly on the go and constantly eating. And I was always looking for great snacks for him, and I just saw there was still a hole in the market, because I had made my girls' baby food for both of them. And so when Zebby came along, I thought, gosh, there's still nothing ready-made on the shelves, to feed these kids that aren't full of sugar and full of preservatives and full of garbage. So I started playing in the kitchen and created these little bars that I was calling Smarty Bars for him. And I thought, you know what, if he loves these and friends love these, I'm going to see if I can get these to market. So I started Rebel Grain, which was the name of the business, and Smarty Bars was my product. But it was all, again, from the heart of wanting to feed my son and feed others with the same kind of philosophy that I had, which is we don't need all the junk. We don't need the extra sugars and the preservatives, because food in and of itself, the way it's created, a lot of times if you put it together right, it's going to have that flavor that we desire. And so that's where that came from.
I guess at what point did you, or how did you hear about Food Fighters, and how did you go about?
Food Fighters is such a funny story because I remember I have a girlfriend who, one of my very best friends in Portland, she's a bodybuilder. And I had always told her, Dre, we have got to do the Amazing Race. This was our whole goal because she has the muscle and I can kind of work my way with people and we would be this perfect pair. So I was actually looking for Amazing Race casting. And they weren't casting for the Amazing Race. And so I thought, well, let me look around. Let me see what the other stations have. Maybe there's a new show. Maybe there's something else we could do. So I landed at NBC, and I scroll down, and I see, are you a home cook that thinks you can beat the pros? And I'm like, yes, because my kids hate eating out. People love to come to my house. I think I got the goods. So I just sent in an email. I just said, hey, here's who I am. I'm known as the quinoa queen here in Portland. I do some local TV. Here's some links to my spots. I have a food blog. Here's a photo of me. If I'm what you're looking for, give me a call. And I didn't expect anything. I mean, I don't troll the casting, you know, I just sent it out. And so I get this call 2 hours later, and it pulls up from LA, and I'm thinking it's somebody from my husband's family because they're all from LA, and I answer, and she says, hey, I'm from NBC, and I got your email, and I'd love to chat with you. And then the ball just started rolling from there.
Now, when you were actually, when you were part of Food Fighters, did you already have in your mind set what you were going to be preparing?
So the way, I didn't quite know. They asked for signature dishes. So I knew they wanted something that came from me. So instantly when I think of signature dishes, it's the things I ended up preparing on the show. But the way that it worked is through the casting process, they said, you know, send us 15, I think it was 12 or 15 of the things you love to make. Then we pared it down and said, what are these, out of all of these dishes, which dishes can be made in 25 minutes or less? Because, you know, they're trying to, each of those rounds were very short rounds. So they were looking for things that could be prepared in a short amount of time that reflected who I was at my heart. So by the time we pared it down, we ended up with those dishes, and then my backup dish was actually mac and cheese, because I make an amazing mac and cheese. But we ended up with 6 total, and so when I step on the stage, yes, I mean, I went in with those 5 dishes and 1 backup, knowing that was what I was going to cook. But those, again, were pared down from like 15 dishes that I make on a pretty regular basis.
Now, of the chefs that you competed against, was there one that kind of was your favorite or kind of stood out during the competition?
So I did not know which chefs were coming out at what time. When I walked on that stage, literally in the first round, I didn't know who was coming out of the doors. There was this big black wall, like silhouettes on the wall. So all I knew is there would be 5 people walking out. So each time they walked out, it was the first time I had seen them. It was the first time I knew who I was up against. I didn't even realize, too, that when they walked out, like, they'd start talking trash. And I remember thinking, am I supposed to talk trash back? I'm not sure. What am I supposed to do here? So I realized that was the game. These chefs were coming out, and that was all part of the game, a little bit of intimidation and stuff. So as it plays out, the 3rd round, Michelle Ragusis, the blonde, oh my gosh, she hands down was my favorite, because something you don't know when you watch the show is the day before, I think one of the news stories covered this in my interviews, but the day before I was in my room and I was studying my recipes and I was really nervous, and I had the Food Network playing. So Food Network Star was on, and she was one of the contestants. So I had watched probably 7 or 8 episodes of her competing that whole day before. So I'm standing on the stage, and they're saying, you know, let's bring out the next chef. It's Michelle Ragusis, and my jaw dropped, because I'm like, I know this woman. I've been watching her on TV now for like 24 hours. So she walks out and she stands there, and I'm like, I know you. She's like, yeah, I've been on some shows, and they cut all of that out. But she and I just instantly had a bond. She had a great sense of humor. She had a great spirit. When you watch the show and she looks at the family and she's like, hey, I'm going to beat your mom now. I mean, that was her. She tough, but funny at the same time. And I was thrilled that we got to compete, but that was the only interaction we had. I didn't know her before. I didn't know her after. But she really made that experience, I think, out of the 5 rounds. She made that Food Fighters Day just a blast for me.
Now, after being on the show, I guess, were you expecting such a response from Guam and locals abroad?
No, I was so humbled and honored, I tell you, because when we filmed Food Fighters, What you see in that 1 hour was probably 10 hours of filming on stage. It was probably 12 hours of interviews over 2 days. It was a home package. They came up to Portland and they filmed probably another 12 hours in Portland. So they had so much footage to work with that when I saw it all put together and I saw how much they honored my home and my culture and truly my story, I was so blessed by that, number one. But then to see the response from Guam, I mean, I remember being on Twitter that day because they had asked us to, you know, participate in a Twitter party. And so then I got on Facebook and I was reading through the hashtags and people were blowing it up. They were like, she said estufao on TV. I mean, people I didn't even know. They were so excited to hear lumpia and estufao and mangoes and Guam. And I think somebody had counted how many times the show said Guam was like 44 times or something. So the response that came from that was just so humbling because being somebody that hasn't been back for all these years, I mean, this is still my home. I was raised in these waters. I was raised in these islands. My Nana is my heart. You know, she was the one that took care of me growing up. And so to feel that love across the water from Guam and to see Guam get such a positive light, I mean, the fact that I was blessed, the Lord gave me that platform to say Guam in front of 4.6 million people that watched that night. It was a blessing. It was a blessing to feel that from home.
And now that you're back on island, I mean, has it sunk in yet? That's your...
No, being home is totally surreal. You know, my dad does a lot of work with the Outrigger Hotel, and so he had said, my Christmas gift to you guys is I want you to land and stay at the hotel for the first few days. So we were on the beach the first few days. We got to see the sunsets, and the kids got to wake up and be in the water at like 9 a.m. every day. And so I was telling him, I said, you know, this was my upbringing. I mean, back in the day when my dad was in bodybuilding and there wasn't a lot of the hotels down on the row, we would park up at the top of the cliff and walk down to Tahiti Rama that was there way back in the day. And we were the only ones on the beach, and we'd start early in the morning and we'd end at sunset. And so I feel like coming back, they got a little taste of that with us being down there. But then waking up and, you know, my boys are out, my husband and my boy are out riding motorcycles this morning, you know, in the boonies, and we've had the machete and we've been out cutting coconuts. And so it hasn't sunk in the sense that I haven't seen a lot of my family just yet or my friends. But just the pleasure of having them here and seeing them in the water, it brings back memories for me that make me really feel comfortable and happy to be home.
And I guess after the trip, what is in store for you when you get back?
My husband loves to say, now, what do you do again? Because I don't really have a thing that I do. You know, I'm a mom. I mean, first and foremost, my heart is to be a mom. And so when I get back, I'll continue my food blog. I'm really inspired to keep doing that. Maybe venture out a little bit from quinoa and just talk about some of the other things that I prepare, maybe a lot more cultural influence in what I'll start writing about. I got a couple of calls from Food Network shows, but I think one that I was hopeful for, I was just told maybe not this season, maybe next season. So something to watch. Maybe there will be something in the mix there. The big project I'm working on is I'm the Frigidaire online spokesperson. So I did a big Frigidaire campaign where I did some recipes for them, and we're in talks to continue that for 2015. So I think there's some big stuff happening with brand ambassadorship is what I'm hopeful for. Commercial work like that would be great. But my heart really, as I look through all these projects, is just to make sure that first and foremost I'm available for my kids, because that's what I chose to do when I chose not to practice law. So I don't want anything to distract from that. You know, I don't have visions of grandeur, and I don't hope to be some big superstar. But if it comes my way and it fits in this family that we've built, I'm really excited for some of those opportunities.
And I guess for the viewers that are watching, I guess you have a message to them. Maybe like the support that they gave you throughout, you know, leading up to Foo Fighters, or I mean even now, how your name is still brought up a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, representing the island.
Yeah. I think I would say to all of my local people is I'm humbled and I'm honored, and it's something I could have never dreamed of, that I would be the name that they would talk about when they talk about Guam being mentioned, you know, in the big world abroad. But I am so blessed, and it feels so good to be home, and I'm thankful to all of the ones that come up to me. I've been stopped by people in the mall, and I think it's so sweet. And if somebody sees me, I hope they'll come over and give me a big hug, because I'm really excited to just meet people that got to see the show. And I'm very, very thankful for all of the support and the emails, the outpouring of love. It seriously, it just warmed my heart. And yeah, I want to say thank you, because it's a true blessing.